Hello YouTube, this is Morgan Airspeed Prime here with my next Avatar video. This is going to be an Avatar fan commentary track for the episode Book 3 Fire, Episode 9 Nightmares and Daydreams, as requested by a few of you who watched the previous videos. So again, I'll say continue to recommend me videos or episodes that you want to see a commentary track for from both Avatar and from Korra. Obviously, I'm keeping in mind the suggestions given in the previous videos as well, but keep them coming in for sure so I know which ones you want done. So we're going to get ready to start the commentary in just a second, but yeah, in case you're wondering how this works, the idea is that when I stop talking for this intro, there'll be about a 10-second pause in the video, and that's basically the point at which you should probably pause this video, get your copy of the episode prepared, whether that be DVD, Blu-ray, online stream, whatever. And so after that pause, when I start speaking again, that's when I have hit play on my copy of the episode. It's when you should hit play, and we should be synced up if you do it correctly within like a second or two of each other. So you know, it's not a reaction commentary. It's more of a coming from a fan who knows the series very well. So you know, being a second or two out of sync shouldn't be too much of a problem, but definitely make sure you have your episode ready to go so you can follow along with the commentary track. But yeah, I'm going to stop speaking now. When I start speaking again, hit play and we should be synced up. Okay, so here we are with 309 Nightmares and Daydreams, right in the middle of Book 3 Fire. We're in the lead up to the invasion here. This is the episode directly before the invasion. So there's a lot of kind of, you know, hype in a way building up to this one. Of just like, what is the moments before the invasion like for these characters? And they play on that to a degree in this episode. But I think they tonally get it very, very wrong on the Aang side of things, which is why I would actually consider this to be my personal weakest episode of Avatar. I place this below the Great Divide because I feel that the Aang section of this episode is one of the most wasteful sequences like in all of Avatar. I think it's one of the most kind of poorly written and sort of like ill thought out parts, in that I don't know why they didn't treat it more seriously when it's a very, very serious thing. Like the characters believe this is the final battle. We as the audience know it isn't, because there's like still like 12 episodes left, but for the characters this is the big one. And yes, okay, Aang freaks out, but why do they treat it like such a joke? It's called Nightmares and Daydreams, but like everything except one is a daydream, and we'll see that over the course of the episode. There's only one serious one, and because of that, like even the one serious one doesn't really feel that important. And then the way they resolve it, I think, is very poorly done, in that Sokka in the invasion episodes has a much better arc that's on a similar style to this, of being lacking in confidence going into the invasion. I think Sokka's feeling he's not a good leader is a much better dynamic than Aang just comedically freaking out here, because it's like, okay, like I get it, the whole idea of like he doesn't really think about some of this stuff until like 316, the Southern Raiders, of like, I might have to kill Ozai. But it's, I think, tonally very, very off, in that most of this episode is sort of like anime references, sort of references to other things, and I feel they almost forget about the characters and what's actually going on in this episode. Thankfully, the Zuko side of the episode is very, very good. It's a very important side of the episode. But you can see here straight away, it's like, you know, Aang looking like Goku from Dragon Ball, which is like a fun reference if you're familiar with Dragon Ball. But like, if you're just viewing this as Avatar, it's a bit like, okay, he's having a kind of comedic daydream / nightmare about like over-the-top comedy Ozai and just, you know, him losing. And it feels like they really revert to sort of like very, very like low-key sort of kid-centric humor in all of this, back in the style of like the early episodes of Avatar, where there's a lot of sort of toilet jokes and stuff like that. But like we're 309 here, and we're still doing it. again, there's some memorable moments, like we'll get to it with the whole Appa and Momo fighting kind of sequence, but I don't think it's worth just how off key I think this episode is, considering the timing. Like, you have such a serious focus on Zuko in this side of the episode, and then with Aang, it's complete comedy, even though, like, it's the Avatar about to sort of fulfill his destiny in the final battle. It doesn't work for me. So this is interesting, seeing Zuko sort of begin to become like okay with it, like, yeah, I'm royalty, I'm back in good graces again. Like the servants are, you know, yeah, doing the stuff I want them to do. You know, he has fangirls. The people are happy to see him, and it all seems to be finally going well for Zuko. And you can see like little things like this of like, oh, like I don't feel the need to constantly do this because, you know, he's not used to, I suppose, all this royal treatment recently. But he's like, okay, if they're offering, okay, I'll take it, even though it's like literally just there. And yeah, it's just him going to visit his girlfriend's house, and I like their dynamic. I really do like Zuko and Mae's dynamic. I think it works very well. It's obviously a complete contrast to Katara and Aang's dynamic, but it works for the characters, and I think it makes sense that the two key relationships are not like so similar. And it's like, okay, like there's a hint of seriousness here of him like overtraining, but then they always like cut it off with comedy, and I don't think it works. And it's the same thing with Legend of Korra, the worst episode of Korra, Remembrances. They do this sort of same thing where they make it very over the top, that because they don't have as much to work with, they make up for the fact that they don't have everything with just, let's go crazy over the top with the Bolin stuff, with the Mako, making fun of Mako bits and so on. And like, it's still pretty well animated for like what they're doing here. Like, that was a relatively cool sequence of just Aang doing the air scooter but freaking out. It's just they could be doing so much more interesting stuff here of like actually addressing how Aang feels about this stuff in a similar way to what they did with the Guru in the lead up to the kind of book 2 finale. And I get that they basically have 2 finales this season, with the invasion and also then with Sozin's Comet. So do you do the same build up, you know, twice really? But of course, they have their kind of, I suppose, gimmick for the finale with the whole idea of Aang taking a life. Does he kill Ozai or not? But anyway, yeah. So, you know, we come in here, more anime references, and just being referential within itself. It's the thing is, like, they do similar styles of humor in like Embron and Players, but it works so much better because it's being referential to the series. It's the series addressing, like, the characters addressing their history basically through seeing it during the play. This is like Aang concerned over confronting Ozai by encountering this sort of comedy version of himself and Ozai in a daydream / nightmare. It's just not great. And again, math tests, it just feels a little bit like, okay, they obviously do math at some point in the Avatar universe, but still. I do like that moment of Katara there, of just like, she knows Aang likes her, and she's just like, okay, I'm using it right now. Please, do this for me. And he does actually agree to it. So that at least is kind of well written. And again, it's nice to see that, like, the moment when, like, Zuko and Mae's relationship is, like, at its best is basically coinciding with Zuko about to basically realize he's probably at his most uncomfortable being here in the capital. And then, yeah, there we go. The fact that he wasn't immediately invited to the war meeting, and suddenly everything's going right, except he hasn't been invited to something super important. And even Mae knows about it, but he doesn't. So, there's those doubts, there's questions, and it links into the whole idea of like Azula sort of, you know, threatening Zuko with the whole idea of like, oh, you know something, don't you, Zuko? Well, I've actually told Father that you were the one who killed the Avatar, unless you know he's alive. That's pretty good stuff. That looked incredibly painful for Sokka. And it's just like, okay, like a nearly a full scene on just Sokka do some climbing. And it's interesting enough, but like, this is such an important point in the series, and you could be doing something really interesting with, I think, all of the characters, because I think the other dynamic here is just like, okay, Aang is very concerned about what's happening because he's the Avatar. Why is everyone else so casual about this? And then in the next episode, Sokka gets very nervous before the big speech to reveal the plan. But, you know, Toph and Katara, it's just like nothing. Completely cool, calm, and collected. Not a hint of nerves, really, or anything, so. It just it feels like they could have put more like effort into the writing of this to do something that little bit more important. Yeah, and this is at the point where like they're still kind of not fully treating Aang's freakouts all that seriously, but they're just about to actually have to realize they have to deal with something. And then they just focus on like, let's come up with kind of, at least with the other two characters, comedic ways of doing this. And even this, they sort of end up treating a bit kind of comedically. Of just like, oh, it's getting hot in here. That's how it's going to feel when you fight Ozai. Yeah, and here we go. Yeah, I feel really warm. Like I'm burning up. And look, as critical as I am with this episode, like it's still enjoyable to watch. It's just absolutely a case of what could have been. That I do consider this to be just like this really bad missed opportunity, where in such a great episode for Zuko, like Aang is, you have one of the weird comedy episodes. And I like the Wang Fire Beard coming back here for like psychiatrist Sokka, but it's like, you know, the contrast between what group is actually doing versus what's about to happen. Yeah, the koala sheep are a pretty cool animal. But again, it's like days before the invasion, Aang screamed into a sheep. Like, really? And here we go, Azula. And it's always interesting to see Azula without the makeup, and like you realize just how kind of like, almost like really different she looks without it. Yeah, and her point is just like, oh, so obvious you were meant to be there, just go. And like you kind of half don't know if like she's just being honest there, or like she's hoping like he turns up and gets in trouble or something like that. But yeah, everything was going so well, and all of a sudden all of his concerns basically are back. And then yeah, here with Toph, it's just like, yeah, let's beat up Aang before the invasion. And it's not that like I think focusing on humor is bad. In like the last commentary I did, humor was a huge focus with Chong and the Nomads, but it fit within the episode that otherwise had other stuff going on. Here, it's purely odd humor that doesn't really match. And I like scenes like this of just like Mae knows what happened, how he got the scar, and like, yeah, why would you want to go after what happened? But it does hurt him that he hasn't been invited. I love that expression on her face, which is she knows like she's trying to sort of cheer him up, but that he is treating this very, very seriously. Yeah, and again, it's just like everyone else is so casual about this, but Aang's the only one who isn't. So here we go, kind of the one actual nightmare with some actual like frightening imagery in a way. But because it's like the only one, it's kind of like, is it being symbolic of like what's to happen or anything, or is it just like the one contrast to everything else? And that's what it feels like, because none of this stuff particularly ends up happening, and it's not like it's meant to sort of like be a prediction of like what could happen if it goes wrong. It's just like the one bad thing in the episode. And some of it's quite interesting, of course, in that like the symbolism of like, you know, Aang trapped underwater, Zuko on top, the comet in the background, you know, it's kind of like, okay, cool. But it does feel a little bit just like, you know, hashtag, is this symbolic, rather than it actually being symbolic of anything. I love Appa curled up like a caterpillar. Nightmares, you only had one, unless... It's weird, because, like, a lot of the comedic ones, like, are they trying to say that the anime ones at the start were nightmares? Most of them really did feel like daydreams. And this is probably one of the most fun like daydream in the entire episode, because it's like a Katang moment. A smooth Aang here in this situation. And you know it's a daydream because he's basically the same height as Katara here, whereas usually he is a little bit shorter than her. So he imagines himself as being the exact same height as her. And then yeah, it's just like, whoa, this is crazy. Katang kiss. And then here we go. You know it's a daydream. What do we do? Baby, you're my forever girl. What a line. And then you can see he is a little bit shorter at this point. It's only slightly, but you know, it's a slight bit. It is interesting seeing Aang with hair, though, you know, still. And then, yeah, he gets the confirmation that, oh, they're not going to start the meeting without me. This is great. That Ozai actually is not going to go ahead with the meeting until he's there. And Mae is happy for him because she knows how much this must mean to him. Obviously, you know, she still is kind of supportive of the Fire Nation at this point in time, and doesn't sort of realize, you know, the full extent, like we as the audience do, that like it is not necessarily a good thing that Zuko is sort of, you know, buying into the sort of setup that Ozai had for this, of like, you do this, you change the way you are, restore your honor, and you can come back and you'll be fine. when you're more like the way I want you, then you can come back. And yeah, here's probably the one, the bit that people remember the most is the talking Momo, talking Appa, and the big sword fight that happens. Which is just a fun sequence, and it's just like, I think you could still do a little bit of this. But again, the minor section of the episode is the Zuko section. They're devoting very little time to that in the grand scheme of this episode. Like, a good 2/3, almost plus, of this episode is the Aang stuff. And it's the stuff that isn't particularly, like, overly memorable. I would have completely reversed this, if this is the path that they had more scenes with Zuko, really hit the points home on the Zuko side of the story more, given the choices he's about to make, and only have the small section of the episode be what they do here. So it's one of those episodes where, like, there are clear and obvious ways that this could drastically be improved. It's not just that, like, it's bad, they've made a mistake, it couldn't have ever been fixed. No, they could have done stuff here. The voices are funny as well for Appa and Momo. Obviously this is just like Aang going insane and nothing's actually happening in front of them, it's just in Aang's head. I like the designs here are very cool, just like Appa, you know, having like multiple arms just because of the way he is, and you know, Momo just having the single sword. Koala sheep in a slightly different art style, of course. You know, clever attack here. But again, episode before the invasion and we're going down the very weird path with things. Chakras? I think it's scenes like this where it's like, it was cool for a few seconds, but then it just ends up feeling like it's going on a little long here. Like, we've cut back to the sheep like a few too many times. We're really overly hitting home Aang's like crazy state that he's in right now. And it goes way past being like, oh, I'm so concerned for Aang before the invasion, to being like, what is Aang doing? Big line here. Everyone welcomed him. A seat right next to his father. Mae knows that this must be something that makes him happy. Portrait of Ozai here. And yeah, Zuko is the perfect person. He played the role he probably should have played in the past, but he wasn't himself, and that is such a big line. I love that line. It's one of my favorite Zuko lines in the entire series. Of just like, that's the core of this whole thing. That's what it's about. That to get his father's approval, Zuko has to become someone that he's just not, and he finally realizes that moment. And just the bookmarking of the two kind of war meetings is a brilliant section of Zuko's journey. And like, it's a nice thing that the group does for him, of just like, they shave all the sheep, you know, they make him this really nice bed, but in the end, the resolution for a whole like 15-16 minutes of content is basically just, we believe in you, friendship is magic. It's just a very, very basic stuff of just like, yeah, you're ready, we believe in you, you can do it. There's nothing insightful here to justify like how much of this episode was focused on it. Yet like, huge scenes for Zuko are just getting like, you know, a couple of seconds. A quick Mae and Zuko scene. And this is the thing that's getting like lots and lots of focus. Like, if there's anything that's filler in Avatar, it's the majority of this little plot in this episode. And it's just the whole like pants thing is like, that's very much like the toilet humor from the early episodes of like, you know, Sokka coming out of the spirit world. Where's the toilet? There was no toilet in there, and you know, this kind of snot jokes from the early episodes. And then, like I said, very next episode, the whole Sokka Hakoda dynamic with the leadership is a much better setup of like being concerned prior to an invasion, like nervous before like a big event, than anything in my opinion. And like this episode, I think you almost could have used it to do some more of the setup. Like, imagine we did cut away to like Hakoda like gathering the last members of the group, you know, the cameo characters that kind of return. That would have been very, very cool to see, of just like, you know, have a sequence maybe towards the end of the episode of just, you know, the good guys like coming in a little bit more, so you don't have to do it all next episode. But like I said, every episode of Avatar is enjoyable, like to a certain degree. It's a super, super high quality show. I don't consider any of these episodes to be in the way I have my episode rankings done, in the lowest tier that I have possible. I don't think any episode of Avatar is in that tier. With Korra, I have one episode in that tier, and it is Remembrances, because it is, you know, basically just like a filler episode that they had to put together because of budget reasons, but it's still not a great episode. This, because of the Zuko stuff almost exclusively, is saved from, I think, being in that tier, because like if this episode didn't have the Zuko stuff, it'd be absolutely in that tier. And I'm very much like a fan of like consistency across episodes, which is why I do rate The Great Divide as being, you know, obviously just one episode, you know, above this. Like Great Divide, I'd consider like this the second bottom on the list. Nightmares and Daydreams is the bottom, just because I value the fact that at least that episode is consistent across its, you know, 22 minutes. This one is 2/3 like of the absolute most fillery stuff, and then 1/3 very, very interesting stuff. And even then, I think it's even more skewed, where it's only like 4-5 minutes maybe of Zuko stuff, and it's like the majority of the rest of the episode is the Aang stuff. So yeah, they're my thoughts on this episode. I may come across pretty critical on this one, but it's still enjoyable. I'd never skip over this episode, just like I'd never skip over The Great Divide. I always feel a little bit weird when I see people say that, of like, oh, when I rewatch the show I skipped The Great Divide, and it's just like, okay, that's a great opinion to have. I don't even skip Remembrances when I rewatch Korra, just because, you know, I think it's important to respect what they have, unless it was like truly, truly terrible, which I don't think really any episode of Avatar or Korra is. So yeah, that is the end of the commentary track for this episode. In the comments, once again, let me know what episodes you want to see me do. Avatar and Korra, let me know in the comments. Let me know what your thoughts were on Nightmares and Daydreams yourself. But yes, that has been the video. Thanks for watching, and bye.